This podcast is for financial professional use only and is not intended for use with the public. Material is for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide tax, legal, or investment advice. The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of Ash Brokerage. Welcome to Accumulation to Activation, the podcast that breathes life into your retirement planning strategies. If you're an advisor aiming to elevate your practice, deepen client relationships, and stay ahead of retirement income trends, we'll help you capture the opportunities on your doorstep and increase your impact. Each episode, we'll unpack the forces reshaping our industry, from the $44 trillion generational wealth transfer and the evolution of income planning to behavioral shifts, legislative updates, and breakthrough solutions that redefine financial security. Here are your hosts, Mike McLaughlin and Tim Ash.
Welcome back to Accumulation to Activation, where we talk about all things retirement income planning. I'm Mike McLaughlin. I'm head of the retirement division at Ash Brokerage. With me is my normal co-host, Tim Ash. How are you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing quite well. Thanks, McGee.
Good. And we have a guest. He was at our previous episode, Steve Shankerman, one of our most tenured wholesalers and retirement income consultants. How are you today, Shank?
I'm doing great. Thanks for letting me join your podcast.
Yeah, glad to have you here. We are going to be talking about some of the ways to position alternatives to bonds. And Steve, just kind of kick off and talk about some of your conversations that you have relative to asset managers and using fixed and indexed annuities as a bond alternative.
Yeah, so one thing that if you talk to somebody that's not in the financial industry at all and you say the word bonds, I think the thing that most people first think of is they're safe and they can't lose money. Well, that's actually not true. If interest rates go up, bond prices go down. If interest rates go down, bond prices go up. So you can lose money in a bond portfolio based on what the environment's doing. And so we talk a lot about using fixed annuities and fixed indexed annuities as an instrument to get you similar returns that a bond would give you, but then you're just eliminating the risk and smoothing out the portfolio allocation.
And Tim, talk a little bit about why do people even consider bonds to begin with?
Well, I think Steve hit it right on the head. They think of bonds as something that's safe, predictable, and I don't want to get too technical, but there's this thing called a market value adjustment, which Steve said in his words. I love the way you simplify things, Shank. And that is when bonds are up, yields are down, and on vice versa, right? So you have a market value adjustment with a bond, and so the way I look at this is there a way that I can transfer some of that risk, that market value adjustment, to an insurance company? Now, you might say, well, hey, wait, don't annuities have market value adjustments? The answer is yes. But have you ever purchased a bond that has a free withdrawal provision that is not subject to a market value adjustment? The answer is likely no. They don't exist. Or maybe they do, and I'm just not aware. On annuities, you at least have, with most of them, not all of them, a free withdrawal provision of the interest, 5% or 10% of the value, without ever being penalized for taking money out. So I look at it this way, and sorry to get long in the tooth on this answer, McGee. The insurance companies buy more bonds than anyone else in the marketplace. I think I would put my money into a place that knows how to manage them and give me the advantages that are inherent inside of the contract to enable me and equip me to use that product in a great way, whether it's accumulating or taking out safe money.
Great point. I was just going to ask you about that. The other thing is we talk about tax control. You can't always avoid taxes, right? I mean, you can make an argument with a government bond or a muni bond, but the reality is that that muni bond gets added into the modified adjusted gross income. You probably get taxed higher on the premium of Medicare, and you're paying it one way or the other. But we actually did some work. I think it was a question that you kind of challenged us to during a previous podcast, Tim. And we took a look at the MIGA rates and compared that to the Lehman Brothers aggregate bond index and also just money market rates. On a pure rate of return without the tax advantages, a MIGA outpaces the growth from 2012 through 2024 on $100,000 investment by more than $30,000. I mean, that's significant because of the consistency of being able to pay good positive interest rates. And I'm sorry, that was a fixed indexed annuity at a 5% cap rate, which today's cap rates are significantly higher, but we've massaged it out for renewal rates and things like that. But I think the real advantage here in terms of using annuities in portfolios is some of the tax deferred growth and that real rate of return after fees, after inflation, after taxes. That fixed indexed annuity is outpacing those other investments by $40,000. That's huge for the middle American. So, um, Steve, talk a little bit about how often does the value of tax deferred come up, or is it something that's really kind of overlooked?
It does come up, but sometimes I feel it is overlooked. Um, and there's different ways to look at that. But yeah, I feel like it is overlooked and it is talked about in the same time. It just really the conversation I think the advisor has with the client. But we were just recently working on a case where it's getting pretty large. It's non-qualified. We're building up a pretty big tax um, consequence. So now the planning has moved over to how do we most efficiently start, distributing some of this money out of this non-qualified account. Obviously, qualified accounts, it's all taxable. But yeah, I think it does come up, and it's a conversation that needs to be had, especially as you have some contracts that are getting larger and they're non-qualified. There's different strategies that you could implement to start maybe taking some income out of those contracts and spread out the tax liability.
Yeah, Steve. So to Tim's point, there's risk in bonds, and we're taking that away by having that managed by an insurance carrier and shifting that risk. But you have a great way to illustrate that associated with someone's first job. Walk us through how you've gotten into that conversation. I think it's really good to make a client think about that.
Yeah, so a great question. I kind of ask just friends and advisors this sometimes too, but a great question for an advisor to ask a client is, tell me about your first job. Because there's two things that'll happen. First of all, they'll start smiling because they start thinking about their first job, whatever that might be, and it kind of brings back old fun memories to them. And then just let them tell you about their first job, and then you know, because really when you're working, there's really three general ways you can get paid. You can get paid fixed, where it's a hourly or a salary that you're fixed on, or on the opposite end of the spectrum, you could be fully commissioned. You have no guarantees. You're getting full commission, and then kind of in the middle, which I feel most comfortable with, and I've been paid this way most of my career, is kind of the middle ground where you have a base or a guaranteed salary, and then you have some incentive to make more. So my first job is I caddied. I was a caddy at a golf course, and I had a base rate that I was paid, and then depending on how well I did caddying, I would get a tip, which was my incentive compensation. And so those are the three ways to get paid. And so one of the stories I have is we asked that to a client once, and the client was like, "You know what? I've been fully commissionable my entire life. I've never had any base salary, any guarantees." And so you think that in retirement, that client would have been like, hey, I'm okay with putting the money all in the market and drawing a 4% distribution rate out of there. And he's like, you know what? I did that my whole career. He's like, I want some guarantees. I want to know exactly what I have coming in. So in retirement, you can have your money all in fixed and pay out a guaranteed income. You could be all in the market and just pay out some sort of distribution rate that you're comfortable with. Or you could kind of be in the middle where you have some guaranteed income and you have some money still in the market that is fluctuating up and down, to smooth your portfolio out. So that's a great question to ask to get a feel of how comfortable they are with that. And it's a great way to get in the income conversation to start talking about guaranteed income to supplement part of that income.
Yeah, you don't know until you ask, because someone who you think would be comfortable with a variable income and taking risks, they may say, "Hey, I've been within risk all my life, and I'm done with it." Right? Same thing for a business owner when they're selling their business. They've got their entire livelihood invested in that small business, and they just want some guaranteed money for the rest of their life. They've worked hard, and now they're gonna cash out. So a lot of different ways. You just got to make sure that you know what the client is needing and wanting and desiring in order to be acting in the best interest. Tim, let's move that conversation on fixed annuities and distribution over to charitable entities. I know that you've had success with today's interest rates of a guaranteed payout and meeting the minimum 5% on philanthropic tendencies. Talk about how that works, and also what why the charity just love that.
Sure. Well, let me thank you. Let me frame the conversation. And Steve, thanks for how you position things and simplify it for our listeners. I think it's just terrific. Keep doing it. So the charitable conversation, and it doesn't matter if it's a family foundation. It could also be, we deal with a lot of successful corporations that have set up foundations. It could be within a community foundation, et cetera. So this is applicable across the board. And the use of annuities inside of those structures, because of what we all know, you have to distribute 5% of the assets inside of I'll call it a private or a family foundation. So if you have $1 million in the foundation, you are going to distribute $50,000. Otherwise, there's a penalty if you do not. Now, granted, there are some carryover rules and other things that go into it. I'm not going to get into the weeds, but the point is, if you could take an asset class, namely an annuity, put it inside of that structure. And I know people are going to say, well, it's tax deferred going into a tax free structure. You know what? Get over it. Okay. Here's the thing, you have an instrument and a product that can deliver that 5% just like clockwork. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to talk about the market value adjustments. You don't have to talk about anything else. Use the annuity as a financial instrument, and we can lock in the rate for whether it's 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. In fact, we just did a transaction that was a 10-year guarantee that was north of 5%. We've been doing transactions between the 5 and 7 year duration north of 5%. You go to that private foundation and say, you don't have to think about this. Put money into this. It's going to pay out your required amount that you have to distribute. We've seen some very large placements happen because of that, because of the simplicity. It's clean. You don't have to explain it. You're not going to get a statement that is going up and down. It's just something that you can rely on and count on. And you know what? And we're always doing these with the highest rated of carriers. Okay. That's something I think that all of us as advisors can be offering to those that are serving family foundations and the non-for-profit community.
Yeah, That's a great strategy and perfect timing to do that. Steve, I want to pivot back to you because you shared a story with me. It's probably been a year or so ago when you were on the tee box with somebody and they were surprised that you could guarantee them 7% for life, and kind of walk through that conversation.
Yeah, so actually it was, a good friend of mine, and he was saying, "Man, this is fantastic, for every $100,000 I have sitting in my, you know, money market or my savings account, I'm earning, 4+%." And he's like, "Why would I need to do anything else?" And I said, "Well, how long do you expect rates to stay at for?" He's like, "I don't know." And I was like, "Well, what happens if rates go to 2?" And he's like, "Well, I'd get half the amount of rate." And I'm like, "Exactly." I'm like, "What if you could take those dollars and instead of getting 4%, we could get you like 7%?" Because I knew how old he was. I'm like, "What if I could get you closer to like 7%?" He said, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, I did you hear what I said? I was like, "I said I could get you 7." He's like, "How in the world can you do that?" And I said, "We can reposition some of your money into a guaranteed income stream and get you 7%." I said, "You might have to wait a year or two to start it. Right now it might be closer to 6." He's like, "I had no idea." And so and I know he was working with a financial advisor, so he kept asking more questions about that, but he just didn't realize that the risk he was taking, that it could go down or it could go up, right? But what if I could get you 6 or 7 guaranteed for the rest of your life? And he had no idea that that even existed as an opportunity for him.
Yeah, I think that's super important. I mean, that circles right around to what Tim talked about at the top of the show. But also the other thing that always frustrates me is the client said, I didn't know, right? I mean, that's our responsibility from an industry standpoint to at least give that client an option to say no and to make them aware that different options are available and that they can take longevity off the table. Um, I want to finish up fairly quickly here, but Tim and I have talked a lot about QLAC, which I love Tim's new uh, monogram for QLAC being quit losing assets consistently, because you, on the long tail, you eat up your assets. Tim, talk a little bit about deferred income, about taking off the long tail, and how that can be so meaningful for so many people.
I'll start with a question. Whenever the government gives us the maximum allowable amount that we can contribute to something, what do we generally do as a population? We contribute the maximum, do we not? To the IRA, to the 401k, to the SEP, to the qualified plans. QLAC is no different. And to me, it's the QLAC is just this phenomenal instrument that the government has uh, put in our lap that helps address longevity. And it's not for all of your assets, clearly. There's a limit on how much you are able to contribute. And they started it with much lower limits and caps and confusion. And now it's very simple. It's Sesame Street simple. You can contribute a decent amount to a QLAC. And McGee, you can tell me what that amount is.
I believe for this year it's 208, and then it's going to be indexed.
So, husband and a wife. Correct me if I am wrong. I'm sure our listeners and someone out there will correct me if I am. That's why I need to fact check. 208,000 each of you. If you have IRAs that you can put in that, defer and delay RMDs until you're 85. Now we don't recommend that. We recommend saying 80 because you get a 5-year buffer on either side, and there may be circumstances in your life. It could be a health event that hit you sooner than what you were expecting, or you just need the income for whatever the reason is, or you can defer it. So we don't say elect the latest duration. We say elect in the middle, so you have a buffer. But to me, it's a phenomenal instrument because when I talk to folks that say, gosh, how much more do I have to take out of on my RMD? This is also a way to mitigate some of those conversations. Say, hey, look, you know what? We can put 208,000 aside that you do not have to take RMDs for, and it will be there when you need it. Should you live to, and we, we hope our clients all live a long, healthy, prosperous life. It's a great way for them to use a product and instrument to do so. And when the government's telling you how much you can put in and the maximum, listen to it and do it. So anyway, those are my thoughts, Mike.
Yeah, it's one of the most underutilized tool in the financial planning aspect, and you just put a bad memory in my mind. I always hated December the 1st when I'd have to go down to mom and dad's house and do their RMD because they would always fight me like they don't want it, they don't need it. Well, if I had the option of a QLAC way back when, I would have done that in a heartbeat to stop that conversation. So, both of you, thank you very much. We're up against time, but we have dropped a lot of quality information and some great sales story from one of our top retirement income consultants. So, Tim, Steve, appreciate you being on Accumulation to Activation, and we look forward to getting feedback from all of our advisors. If there's something that you want us to attack and address, we'll be more than happy to. Otherwise, please, if you like the content, please like and subscribe, and be listening for our next episode in 2 weeks. Have a terrific week.
This episode of Accumulation to Activation was produced by Ash Brokerage. For more on the most pressing and critical issues facing financial advisors today, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a colleague. For more resources, visit us at ashbrokerage.com or reach out to our team at 800-589-3000. Let's start a strategic conversation about how you can be more efficient with your retirement income and legacy planning solutions. Insurance product guarantees are subject to the claims-paying ability of the issuing insurer. Annuities are insurance contracts and may be subject to fees, surrender charges, caps, spreads, participation rates, and tax implications. Withdrawals are taxable and, if taken prior to age 59 and a half, may be subject to an additional tax. Product availability and features vary by state and carrier. Social Security and tax rules are complex and subject to change. Clients should consult their tax and Social Security advisors. Any modeling or Monte Carlo analysis referenced is based on stated assumptions and are illustrative only. Results vary by client profile, market conditions, and product selection. Past or modeled results are not guarantees of future outcomes.